my name is Kaylin and welcome back to my channel Thriving in Fiction. Today I'm going to be going over some sequels and series that I would like to continue in 2021. Are you ready to get stressed out with me? I have 13 books and volumes that I would like to talk about today that are either sequels in a duology or the next book in a series that I would like to either continue or finish reading in 2021. And looking at this pile, I am intimidated. However, I am not going to put that pressure on myself. I will read what I want to read when I want to read it. And the first book I want to talk to you guys today about is Shadows of Self by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second book in the second era series set in the Mistborn world, and these are all set within the Cosmere, which is Brandon Sanderson's greater universe for all of his adult fantasy, where all his adult fantasy books take place. I've read most of the Cosmere. If you've watched my channel, you know that I read The Way of Kings last year and absolutely fell in love with the Stormlight Archive. And from there, I kind of branched off into a lot of the Cosmere that he has written so far. The only ones I haven't really read, I haven't gotten to any of the short stories that aren't Stormlight, and I haven't read Elantris. I've read Warbreaker, the first era of Mistborn, and the first book in the second era of Mistborn. So this is the second book within that second series in that world. I read the first book earlier this year, and I really enjoyed it, but it was very, very different than the first Mistborn trilogy. So anyone who's read that series knows that that series is very in its own feelings. It's very broody, very dark, very ash-filled, and that first series ends very much within that tone. This series is set centuries after that first one has concluded, so you're definitely dealing with the ramifications and the advancements that have been made due to the events of that first trilogy. And because this is set so far ahead in time, it's a very different world and a very different tone. It's almost slapstick and corny, but in a really good way. I still really enjoyed it. Definitely not as much as I enjoyed the first era of Mistborn or the Stormlight Archive or Warbreaker. But I do still want to continue with the series and pick this up at some point, and then hopefully move on to the third one from there. I believe Brandon Sanderson is working on the fourth one set in this era as we speak. I think that's his current book that he's writing right now. So I definitely want to catch up to where the series is at before that one comes out. But who knows? I think the man writes as fast as I read, so we will see if I get there or not. And the second book that I would like to talk to you guys about today is Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. So this is the second book. I have a problem where I pick up a lot of first books within series, and then it takes me a long time to kind of roll back around and get to the second book in the series. I'll usually get distracted by the shiny new books that are coming out in the bookstores. So if it's something that backlisted that I really want to get through, I usually have to prioritize that very intentionally because my hand will always reach for something newer that just came out first. So as I said, this is the second book within the Farseer trilogy. The first one being Assassin's Apprentice, and I read that one early this year, late last year, and I really enjoyed it. So this is a first-person, one-perspective coming-of-age tale, and it centers on Fitzchivalry Farseer, and he is the bastard son of a prince within an empire or a kingdom set in this Farseer world. And it's told in such a way that it is the older version of the character telling you about his life experience. So it's an adult writing about his youth and his coming of age tale within this world. And I really enjoyed the first one. I enjoyed the character work. Robin Hobb's prose is beautiful. Her character work is amazing, as everyone says. I found the world fascinating. However, it's just a little too slowly paced for me. And I found the storytelling technique of having the character, kind of decades removed from his childhood of what he's telling you about. I found that to be a little bit of a disconnect for me as the reader. I still felt for him and felt for everything that he went through. However, it wasn't as gripping as it would have been, I think, if it had been told in a more traditional, fantastical storytelling way. And the prose is very much a classical way of writing too, so that might be another reason why I found it just a little bit removed. I do find when I'm reading classics, I tend to find the characters just a little bit removed, almost like there's a filter over them. And it takes me a while to get over that, and I don't think I got over that while reading the first book in this series. However, everyone talks about how great Robin Hobb's character work is. And if you know anything about me or have watched any of my channels, you know that I absolutely fell in love with the First Law trilogy this year by Joe Abercrombie, and it's because of his character work within that trilogy. So I definitely want to give this one a chance and continue on with the series, because if there's a chance that I'll love it half as much as I love that one, I definitely want to give it a shot. And from there, I also have her Ship of Magic trilogy sitting on my shelf, because I knew when I bought this first trilogy that even if I didn't like it, I would want to move on to her Ship of Magic, because one, I absolutely love pirate stories. Like, that is, talk about tropes you love. I love pirate stories. I find them infinitely fun and adventuresome, but it's also told in the third perspective, and it's a multiple POV story, so it's a lot more traditional in that way. So I knew that even if I didn't jive with Robin Hobb's prose and writing style and narrative choices within this first trilogy, that I would want to move on with the next one. So I definitely want to read this first one first so I can continue on with the second one, which I'm almost looking forward to more. And the next book I want to talk to you guys today about is Jade War by Fonda Lee. This is the second book in the Greenbone saga. I read Jade City, I think it was mid last year, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the atmosphere and the mob and familial workings, the almost political workings within that family. I enjoyed the really cool magic system that was set up within this world. However, I never picked up the second one, which everyone says is so much better than the first one. However, I put it off a little bit because I wanted to read it closer to when the third one comes out, and the third one comes out later this year, so any day now I should be reaching for Jade Ward to pick up. I can't wait. I love again, this is another series that really focuses on the characters and the familial relationships that you're following. I'm a sucker for good character work, and I can't wait to continue these characters' stories. I found them really interesting in the first one. Can't wait to see what happens to them in the second one. Terrified of what might happen to them in the third one. And the next sequel that I want to talk to you guys about today is the second book in a trilogy. I'm awful for it. And that is Call of the Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. I read the first one in this trilogy early this year. I think it was in January that I picked that up. I found the storytelling and the world building to be exceptionally immersive, because there was no hand-holding, there was no exposition dumps absolutely at all. There was, this is the way it is, and you need to figure it out. There was no hand-holding done by the author. You were dropped in this world, and you either figure it out through context or you don't figure it out at all. And I absolutely love that kind of storytelling, or at least the way it was done in that book. So I definitely want to move on to the second one soon. There's so much to love within this world. There's dragons, pirates, pirate ships, and tall ships made out of the bones of those dragons, a magic long gone from the world coming back. There's all of these awesome fantasy tropes, but it's unique in that throughout the whole first book, you're following one person's perspective, and it's almost this character witnessing the birth of a legend. So it's almost this person's life experience watching his captain, whom I think will be a legend in the future centuries of this world, and you're getting his perspective on the human, the true human that makes up that legend, while also getting amazing side characters and an incredibly fleshed out, lush, tropical world. So I cannot wait to pick this one up as well. And the next book is actually a reread for me, and that is Fire by Kristen Kishore. I read the Graceling Realm books way back when they first started coming out, when I was a lot younger. And I reread Graceling, that first book, earlier this year, and really liked it. I mean, I'm obviously not going to connect with it as much, being an adult reading young adult fiction now. However, I still really liked it, and all of the elements that I remember loving about it were still really present. It's I love Christian Couture's writing. It's very age appropriate and almost whimsical, but also not shying away from the real trials and tribulations and darkness that exists in the world. So I found it to be a really good balance of both. And from what I remember, I really enjoyed Fire. I think I liked Fire more than I liked Graceling when I was younger, so I can't wait to see if that stands. And from there, I'll hopefully pick up the next book, which is Bitter Blue, and then I know the fourth one came out earlier this year, but in order to get there, I need to read Fire first, so hopefully I'll be reaching for this soon. Again, being a mood reader, I don't know when that will be. So this next one, I actually read the first one in the series last month, and I absolutely loved it, and that is the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. I cannot wait to get the rest of these novellas in this series. I found it to be an excellent palate cleanser between all of the high epic fantasy that I've been reading lately. I usually read a lot more of a mixture between fantasy, young adult, and science fiction. However, lately, all I've been wanting to read is high epic fantasy, and I will blame that on my absolute falling in love with the First Law trilogy. But in between that, it's really nice to just sit down and kind of pick up a really, really well-written, well-fleshed out science fiction novella in between. So I loved All Systems Red for that. And I am really looking forward to getting the rest in the series so that I can continue to do that in the months to come within the year. And hopefully get to I think a novel came out earlier this year, as well as another novella. Anyway, I love the Murderbot, so I can't wait to spend some time with it. And the next sequel that I want to talk to you guys about is actually the second book in a duology, and that is The Parable of the Talents by Octavia E. Butler. And again, the second book in a series. I read the first one earlier this year, Parable of the Sower. I loved her storytelling, her character, the themes that she was exploring, the themes of dealing with the ramifications of global warming while also dealing with community and tribalism, and also the overarching theme of religion and the part that it plays within a society. It was a very bleak but also realistic story. So because of that, I need to be in the right headspace in order to pick this second one up, because Octavia E. Butler's stories, or at least the story that I read, it wasn't easy to get through, but at the end, I was so glad I did it and I got to the end because it was such a rewarding read. And I know whenever the mood strikes that I will enjoy? Is that the right word? Appreciate picking this up. And the next book I want to talk to you guys about is, again, the second in a series. However, there is only 2 books published in this series so far, so if I read this one, I will have completed it, and I will consider that a win. And that is A Desolation Called Peace by Arkady Martin. Arkady Martin? I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It's right there. It looks like this. So I read A Memory Called Empire earlier this year, and I really, really enjoyed the thematic discussions. You're following a diplomat on the outskirts of an empire who is sent into the capital planet of the empire when her predecessor goes missing. So from there you have discussions on empire and dominant culture and colonizing. Humanity and having individual identity was a really big theme in that first one, and where that ended and where I think the story goes in the second one. That theme of humanity, identity, what makes us human, I think is going to be the jump off point for where the series goes. As much as I love character work, and I will read science fiction with strong character work, I love having these big thematic discussions on technology and humanity and what makes us human versus what makes someone alien. So for that reason alone, I'm really looking forward to picking this up. And also the Texiclani Empire has an emphasis on poetry, and they have almost rap battles with each other, and it's really an interesting look at culture and humanity and preserving one's culture when a dominating one is trying to snuff it out. So I'm really looking forward to picking this one up as well. And the next book I want to talk to you guys about today is, well, I don't have it, but I have the first one that I read, and that is Mort by Terry Pratchett. So this is the first book in the Death sub-series set within the Discworld expansive series. So if you don't know, Terry Pratchett wrote the Discworld, and it is, I don't know how many dozens and dozens of books long. So within that series, there's little subsets that you can read and without reading all of the other ones. And the Death subseries, I don't know if that's a term, but I'm making it up today. So Mort is the first one within that Death subseries. And within this series, you're following the personification of Death, who exists within the Discworld and is responsible for ferrying souls to the afterlife. Naturally. I absolutely loved Mort. I loved Terry Pratchett's voice, his narrative style, his sense of humor, and his wit. And I loved getting a sense of his almost underlying anger at society and humanity, but also a tenderness for it as well. So I absolutely loved this one. It was such a good palate cleanser in between my First Law books. So I cannot wait to pick up, I think the Reaper Man is the next one in this series. And I can really see myself also reading the Guards, or the Night Watch, I think it's the Night Watch. The City Guard, whatever the sub-series is that follows the Guards. But I want to get through the Death one first, but that means I also have to buy the rest in the series. I have a problem, and that's okay. And the next book or series that I want to talk to you guys about is a book that I actually just finished this month, but I enjoyed it so much that I know I'm going to want to read the second and the third one, and then the fourth one comes out later this year, and I would love to be caught up by the time that happens, but God knows if that will happen. But, you know, I'm not going to put pressure on myself to make that happen. I will read it in my own time as it comes. So I read Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft this month. I really liked the whimsical world. The prose was beautiful and definitely tilted towards the classical nature of prose and storytelling, but it fit Senlin so well. Like, it was written in the style that Senlin the character reads, because he's a bookworm. So you're following Senlin as he travels to the Tower of Babel, set in this fantasy world. This Tower of Babel exists, and it's this gigantic tower that nobody knows where it came from, and it has different levels called ringdoms, and each ringdom is its own kingdom, so its own ruling class. They are connected, but each one has its own shtick, its own way of doing things, its own way of ruling over the people there. So you're following Senlin as he arrives at this tower with his bride on their honeymoon, and then almost instantaneously gets disconnected from her and loses her within the tower, and then you're following him trying to get her back. And I loved the whimsical, dark nature of this tower and this world, and I loved watching Senlin lose his naivety and his innocence as he climbed this tower and got further into the narrative and learned more about this tower that he almost romanticized and idealized, because the reality was nothing like what was written. I loved watching him navigate this world and try to reconcile his morality. He's never really had a situation that challenged his morality the way he faces that in this book. So I'm looking forward to that. I really liked the side characters and his ragtag group that he met along the way. And I'm looking forward to reading more about them in the following novels. I have so much reading to do, it's scary. So the next book I want to talk to you guys about is actually a graphic novel, and it is the second volume in the series. Again, I've read the first one and then didn't pick up anything else from there. But it's also a reread, so I will give myself a little bit of a pass. And that is Monstrous by Marjorie Liu. And I read the first 4 volumes of this. The 5th one is now out, so I definitely want to go back and reread to refresh my memory, because it's been a while. Before I read the 5th volume that came out. I think it came out last year. It's a really unique Asian-inspired steampunk world. The art is lovely. It has a really unique world. It has a cat. It has like sentient cats in it, and I love it. There's a mythology to it that is exceptionally unique. I don't know if I've ever come across a mythology quite like it before in anything I've read. The art is beautiful, so there's no reason for me not to continue, and therefore I would like to. And the last book I want to talk to you guys about is actually the first in the series. However, I'm reading the standalone that came before this series now, and I am head over heels in love, and therefore I want to talk about this book to hold me accountable to actually picking up this series and going through with it. And that is The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. So, as I said, I'm reading The Hobbit right now. So I'm actually reading a chapter a day each night before I go to bed, and I'm listening to the theatrical playlist, the theatrical narrative of it on Spotify, and it is so immersive. It has the musical themes from the movies. So if the characters are in the Shire, the Shire theme is going on. If they're talking about the ring, that ominous ring theme is in the background. So I'm absolutely loving it. I'm finding it so immersive, and I love the hobbits. I love Bilbo. You know what? I think I identify with hobbits more than any other magical species I can think of. All they want to do is live in their cozy little hobbit holes, read books, sit by the fire, and eat 12 breakfasts a day. And I am all about that life. So, because I am loving The Hobbit so much, I can't wait to actually start the Lord of the Rings series, and experience it the way Tolkien imagined it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it this year. Alright guys, so that has been some sequels and series that I plan on finishing or at least continuing in the year 2021. Let me know in the comments below, what series are you in the middle of? Let's share in each other's stress about our own personal goals and the weight we put on our own shoulders about what we're reading. So drop a comment below, let me know what series goals you have in mind for the rest of the year. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, guys, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.